It's beer o'clock on Real Ale Craft Beer. Today we've got a beer from Fuller's Brewery and it's their honeydew. And I had a look at my YouTube uploads and realised I've never ever reviewed this. But I have an answer as to why. I reviewed this on a Skype. Skype is in the news recently. It's recently closing down, but I did a Skype video call beer review with this beer back in 2011, and it felt like the future. It was about 14 years ago, and it was kind of, for me, I think it was my first ever online video call beer review thing. It was with a guy from Denmark, Peter, the master of hobbits. Hello Peter, how you doing? And it just fell off my radar. It fell out of my mind, and because I live in Wales, we don't really get this on cask or in keg, which would be lovely on a summer's day in a beer garden, to be able to find this for a pint in a beer garden. Fuller's Honeydew, because I remember it being a good beer all the way back then. So here's the bottle cap. Brewed beside the Thames since 1845. Here we go. Brown bottle. Beer in the glass. There we go. We got a 1 to 2 finger white head. Good levels of carbonation. Clear filtered beer. No sediment in there. Light straw coloured. Doesn't that look magnificent? I do wish we every now and again will get Fuller's London Pride in a Wetherspoons in South Wales. But I do long, and I do kind of like hope that one day we get some of this sort of beer from Fuller's on cask in Wales, because there's an opportunity now. Brains Brewery are not the brewery they once were. They've sold all their pubs. There's a real opportunity, I think, for a company like Fuller's to come and have a look at the South Wales market and put some of their beers in cask. That would be lovely for me. Aroma, that I can smell it from here. It's got this kind of like almost kind of lemony honey aroma from a half arm's distance. It smells really good. So let's dive in. Yeah, the golden ale. We'll talk about the golden ale and why it exists in a moment, why I think it exists. But let's dive in. A little bit of grain in there, a little bit of malt. Touch of honey, not overly done with honey. A little bit of sweetness from that light malt. Touch of kind of grassy, stinging nettle bitterness. Let's dive in. Cheers, everybody. Splendid. Stone the Crow splendid. Very refreshing. 5% ABV. Good ABV for a golden ale, I feel. A lot of golden ales coming in for 4.5% ABV, but this is good. You can get a slight taste of that. You know it's a beer with depth. You know it's a beer at 5% ABV. The honey's coming through really well. Carbonation pushes the beer on the inside of the mouth, releases more of the flavour. It's a very refreshing beer. It really is. It's light. It's crispy. And there's lager qualities to this beer. And this is where I wanted to lead to. There's a big stinging nettle, almost kind of like, if I was to guess at it, kind of German Hallertau stinging nettle hop. The stinging nettle is, of course, close on the Darwin tree of life. It's the cousin to the hop, is the stinging nettle. It's very close. It's like kind of branches off from one another. And before we found hops, we used to use stinging nettles to make beer, to preserve beer. Then we found hops, then we found loads of flavour, didn't we? But it was put in there to preserve beer, hops and stinging nettles before that. And of course they added that to preserve the beer, but they also added it for flavour. So this kind of Hallertau hop, which I'm guessing at, it might be on the side of the bottle, I'm guessing this Hallertau, is there for flavour, and it's there for a reason. And that reason, I think, pardon me, is that the ale market in the UK for decades and decades has been struggling with the rise of lager. And these breweries, Shepherd Neames, Truman's back in the day, that unfortunately not a brewery anymore, Fuller's, lots of the Brains Brewery, lots of the other regional Badger Ales, they all had to come up with something to fight back against the lager. So the golden ale was invented, this light golden ale, hops. Fuller's idea was to put some honey in there, which is nice. It's a nice touch of honey. And if you look at it, and if you smell it, it's almost a lager. For me, a golden ale is almost a lager ale hybrid. It balances between being a lager and an ale. In that it's there as a pushback, to push back against lager. Now, ironically, since this beer was introduced, Fuller's are now owned by a lager brewery. They sold to Asahi a few years ago, Japanese lager brand. So they're owned by Asahi. But thankfully, Asahi have left Fuller's to their own devices. They've left them to brew great quality beer. Nothing has changed since the takeover of Asahi. This is still a brilliant beer. Light, crisp, refreshing. Beer garden beer. Four beers in a beer garden on a Sunday afternoon. So that's why I think this beer exists. It's just ironic now that it's now owned by a lager company anyway. I just wanted to see if there's any Hallertau in here. Organic honey, organic hops. It was the days of organic beer. Organic beer was a thing. 2010, when I got involved in beer, everything seemed to be organic. It was the big thing to do. Organic foods, organic beers. Fuller's have kept with it. Honeydew is the UK's leading organically produced ale, naturally brewed using organic honey, malt and hops. This creates a refreshing golden beer with subtle honey flavours balanced by a delicious zesty edge. That zesty edge, I feel, is that Hallertau. I'd love to know, because the hops are not in here, but I'd love to know if it was Hallertau hops that's brewed for honeydew. I've got a funny feeling it is. Rating, I like it. I could drink 4 of them absolutely easily. For me, it's an 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 from Real Ale Craft Beer. Please put your comments in the comments box, subscribe to our daily beer and food reviews, give us a big fat thumbs up. Boom, cheers.